And speaking of the next panel, and which is also the final panel for today's summit, we are going through looking at a different angle now, like because we've been looking at the training, the managing of the workforce as a whole for the organization. And this session, we want to focus more at our team, the HR team itself, and with the topic of what is stopping HR from being strategic. Basically, the idea is like with more technologies available, there are a lot more HR systems available, and there are a lot more different systems to track or understand the workforce. But how does it change the role for our HR team? Does it make our HR team more strategic? And does it make HR leader play a different role? So in this panel, we are going to discuss about this topic of like, what is the new strategic role maybe for an HR leader and also for your team? And to join us, we have a great panel here today. It's sort of like a signature of the type of organization you could find in Hong Kong. We have more public sector organization and also private sector, large and small, or large and medium size, in the sense that to give us a little bit of a difference of how the strategic role of HR would be different. So let me, without further ado, let me introduce them. First, I'd like to introduce Ms. Lisa Ng. Lisa Ng, she's the Chief People and Culture Officer for Hong Kong Productivity Council. Hi, Lisa.
Hi.
Hi, welcome to join us. And next, I'd like to introduce, well, probably don't need much introduction, because Ruth King, she's the head of HR and from Bloom and Growth. She was with us earlier this morning as another panelist in our first panel earlier this morning. Good to see you again, Ruth.
Nice to be here.
Welcome to join us. As I said, we really have a great panel because it really represents a lot of that organization structure or type we find in Hong Kong. Eliza, coming from HKPC, a more public sector, and obviously a very Hong Kong-centric organization, or the workforce is very much based in Hong Kong. And Ruth comes from more private sector. So also, I understand it's more like a digital native organization, as well as a digital marketplace for parental products. But then the organization is spread out, not just in Hong Kong. I think you mentioned in the earlier panel that with many different countries as well. So it's very different, organization structure. Maybe just, a quick introduction to our delegates, to our attendees here today about, your organization structure, or maybe the talent landscape, the type of talents you have in your organization, and how does, the technology play a change to your organization's HR team. It's quite a handful of questions, but I'll start it with Eliza. Would you like to try that?
Sure. Hey, hi everyone. Thanks for the invitations. So let me introduce a little bit about Hong Kong Productivity Council. Hong Kong Productivity Council is a multidisciplinary organization to promote productivity excellence through the integrated advanced technologies and innovative service offering to support the Hong Kong enterprise. We have to promote productivity excellence through the world-class advanced technologies and innovative services. We collaborate with the local enterprises across the industry and world. We own research and development institutes to deliver value with cutting-edge solutions. So it is essential to strengthen the creativities and competitiveness of our employee of achieving the productivity excellence. And that's why, Hong Kong PC will continue to invest in employee development and provide high standards programs for our staff to regularly update and strengthen our professional knowledge. Besides, Hong Kong PC also takes on the social missions to nurture the young research and development talents. We have collaborated with many local universities and organizations to offer various on-the-job training programs for nurturing the next generations of in-note talent for Hong Kong.
Great. Yeah. And how about Ruth? We'd like to share a little bit, maybe the use of technology and how has that probably changed the role for your team and yourself probably as an HR leader as well?
Okay, big question, and I'll try to give some useful answers and not duplicate, because obviously if our attendees, participants were there this morning, I don't want to send them to sleep by saying the same thing. So thank you for that kind introduction, and great to be here at such an important sector discussion. As you said in the kind intro, I have worked for both global huge companies with responsibility for thousands of staff, and conversely, I'm now working for a Hong Kong started business. We've been established for over 18 years now. And so we're homegrown, like a family business, and we have 100 headcount. So I've gone from thousands of staff to 100 staff. Don't think it's an easy gig. Just because it's only 100 headcount, it is damn challenging, because not just because of the geographical spread, we're in 9 different locations, we're in different time zones, we're in different cultures, and technology is the glue, I think, that brings us together. So with COVID, no choice, right? A lot of people working from home or doing hybrid, some days in the office, some days working from not in the office. So it's challenging. I think the role of technology is particularly relevant for everybody who's alive and breathing in this day and age. We've come from a fairly traditional model, and we also have an additional business called Baby Central. And Baby Central is not a B2B model, it's a B2C model, and everything is online. So we have very edgy digi natives that are part of Baby Central, and then we have our original foundation of staff who are following a more traditional path, which is purchasing and ordering and all those good things, as we support our unique brands, bringing those brands into various markets. So it's challenging because of the timeframes, the culture, the languages, but one constant we have, I think, is that technology, that digital pathway. And I'm sure as time progresses, we're certainly investing in more technology and looking at different skill sets, because it's no good having the hardware if our people, the software, don't know how to use it. So we're developing quite a lot on that, which I could share a bit later if you would like.
Sure. Yeah, I think as you mentioned, technology really plays an important role from running an organization to running an HR team and operating or managing the workforce. Eliza, you mentioned a little bit earlier, a lot of the mission and how HKTC is trying to also nurture talents. But can you share with us, like internally, like within your team, how do you see technology changes your role and your team's role, and what are the new strategic roles you see that your team needs to now start to pick up?
Well, as the I think nowadays under the new normal environment, so a lot of the business models, technologies, that's changing the expectations of the workforce. Definitely from the HR team or from our the leaders should not only understand the new technologies and actively integrate it into our organizations to make the HR and the company run more efficiently. So also need to take the lead with agility and sustain the value for the future of the human resources. So from HR standpoint, definitely, so we need to focus on more value-added role of being in change agents of the organizations. With more business increasing, undergoing the internal restructurings and reorganizing, and the role of the workplace become increasingly fluid. So I think HR also will be instrumental in helping the employee and the business partner navigate this shift, definitely.
I remember you mentioned previously along the line about the wellness or DEI within the workforce as well. Would you like to share a little bit about that role HKPC has in or the HR team in bringing that strategic role?
All right, sure. So I think the D&I nowadays is also very important. We need to have the D&I analysis to build and observe the pattern of your organizations. So any paradigm shift, take for example, whether they will have the age group changes, or even the marital status also shift, so that you can design what kinds of the HR strategies that are applicable in your organizations. I think this is very important to understand about the situations of your organizations as an HR leader. So need to put the staff well-being as the much more priorities, apart for the tangible employee benefits. So we need to look at the employee well-being holistically to help the cultivate and physical and mentally resilient workforce, especially under the new normal situations and after the COVID. So we also need to create a better employee experience, better performance and productivities. We also need to expand our responsibilities above and beyond to be the champion of the employee well-being.
Great, yeah, and I think Ruth, you mentioned a little bit about the changing roles, but coming from a very different environment, right? Like from HKPC, you mentioned it is probably smaller in scale for Bloom and Growth, but then at the same time, it's a lot more dynamic. You just talk about how the business nature itself is so different between different business units. How does that makes a strategic role of HR being different? I think particularly we mentioned a little about D&I, and there seems to be already diversity within the organization itself.
Yes.
Can you share with us some of the strategic roles that you envision that your team to play?
Okay, I'd like to follow up, I think, on one of the comments that was made about demographics, because here just in Hong Kong office, I would say I have such a diverse profile of staff. We have the traditional staff that have been fabulously loyal and been with the company, some of them since we started, some of them 5 years, which they consider a newcomer, some 10 years, 12 years, 15 years. So, that profile of staff is a little bit more mature. And then conversely, on the other hand, we have our Baby Central team who demographically are way younger and were born with Digi in their hands. I mean, this is, before they came out of the womb, they were, how shall I say, we're chatting and WhatsApping, and everything is just norm to them online. So a very diverse mix of people. And then, of course, you layer on the different geographical location and the different language capability. It adds to a very complex, challenging environment. But I think one thing to be really clear on, HR has changed forever. So HR participants, get ready to rock and roll, because it's no longer just a role for admin, personnel, business partner. We are now strategic, and we need to be strategic. And as we mentioned before, we have to look at our staff, our people, our hearts, basically, the people at the heart of the organization, after all. We have to keep a healthy heart. And in the recent times with COVID, I think it's really stretched HR's agility to prove that we can move very fast and adapt with providing RAT tests and sending them all around the world and giving people some guidelines of how to use them, when to use them, what are the office protocols, and wellness care packs. This is, none of this was in a handbook or a staff policy and procedure. So it's no longer about P&P, policies and procedures. It's about people, which to me is a big P. And I think that from my perspective, HR should be a customer service department. We have our customers, they are internal, and HR is in the middle. We're serving both staff and also the organization, the leadership team. So it's all about, I think, giving the customer, the internal customer, that amazing experience. And this is where I think digital can really help.
Yes, I agree, with Ruth's comments. No matter on the HR strategies or D&I strategies, that should be embedded with the corporate culture, HR policies and procedures, by adopting an employee-centric approach that can ensure that, high level of transparency and remove any unfair barriers or to support the growth and sustainability of the organizations. Ongoing communications is important to understand and increase the employee engagement with key initiative, raising the awareness of the diversity and foster, the inclusion by providing development opportunities and resources to all employees. And, all we understand that, high attrition rate, for this year, and also quite a lot of the immigrant cases. I think every organization or HR got a headache and how to attract and retain the talent. I think all these we need to consider together.
Yeah, I think you guys both mentioned the new strategic role about like bringing the employee experience, not just, the skill set, not just about the training, but also having that experience within the organization. And I think that also leads to a good questions from the audience. I think it's good time to probably ask that question. I think audience Hui Ling, she asked this question about like, how do you balance the effort spent on tactical HR tasks versus the strategic activities you mentioned earlier, a lot of things like around the D&I or being, having the customer-centric employee or talent management approach, because most HR roles are still tremendously transactional focused, or many business are still, expecting that. Probably not a lot of HR willing to step away to deliver what was the fundamental. I don't know, maybe technology plays a role, but how do you balance that role? Because there's still a lot of technical, transactional, process-based role that you need to still work on. Any takers for this question?
I think first of all, we need to motivate our HR team. So sometimes, we can see that a lot of the attritions, they're always doing the recruitment, searching the talent and so on and so forth. So we need to upskilling ourselves first to understand more for the business acumen, and what is nowadays the employment market is. To be a strategic HR partner, so we also need to understand about from the company perspective, company business inside and outside, and understand how each department and roles actually work and how it all can fit together is the first step to being able to act more strategically. We also need to be able to zoom out and look at the big picture. For example, we have to consider, what our company needs will be for the next 1 to 5 years. Just like, Hong Kong PC, we are the R&D center, and we also provide a lot of the innovative, support to the SME to be more to enhance their productivities, and also using the technologies to help them to run their operation. So definitely we need to search the different kinds of the talents that can help the business growth. That's why I think sometimes we can use the data or the evidence to support us to pull out some reports and review, some analysis, so that that can help a lot to define our HR strategies, or to find the suitable candidates that can fit for the business growth.
How about in Ruth's organization or in your?
Yes, let me jump in there. I absolutely agree that the starting point is we have to look at big picture. What is the organization wanting in terms of the business drivers, the commercial imperatives? And then, of course, we cascade that down. So you go from very high level thinking, and then, of course, you're working that strategy into your tactical implementation. And as you say, we have to balance the operational side with the perhaps considered more sexy strategic side, but we have to have that balance. You can't have one without the other to run a successful business. So I think there's a very famous saying, though, that people don't remember what you say, they remember how you make them feel, or how you make them felt, how they felt. So for me, we're dealing with humans. Yes, there's certainly the data analytics side, and the data needs good analysts to look at it, and what story does it tell us? What facts does it give us? And that, I think, is very useful on the analytical side, but don't forget the human side. Staff still they want to feel connected, they want to have relationships, and staff engagement, I think, has become even more of a hot button when people have been not able to go to the office and chit chat over lunch, or when they have a work query, to have that interpersonal physical networking. So for me, it is a balance, but I think you have to start with where is the organization now, where does it want to be, and what is the impact on the human capital? And then from there you can derive your human resources, your human asset, your human capital planning.
Yeah, it's looking at the big picture, but at the same time thinking it's not like a number, or it's not like a staff number, but they're actual people. That it makes it easier for you to strike that balance, right? Not just looking at the system and other staff number and what have they done and all
but
that.
Dealing with people is never easy.
Yes, and that becomes my next question, because we touch on a little bit a lot of the challenges, because Ruth, you mentioned even it is like 100 people headcount, but it is still a lot of challenges. Obviously technology helps solve a bit of that by providing you that visibility. Both of you talk about the use of data, but I want to touch on any challenges you feel like that is making it very difficult for HR to move on and have a more strategic role. Would it be something along the line of having not having the support from the top executive, or is it more about managing your team, getting your team to be more open-minded, or step out from their comfort zone in doing transactional process-based work? What do you think are the major challenges?
All of the above. Honestly, every single thing you've mentioned, I think, is a challenging touch point. I think the first prerequisite, the first ideal, is of course to have the buy-in from the top, to have the CEO, the board's support and understanding of why HR is suggesting certain changes. And then, of course, you have the support. Next step, you've got the challenge, big challenge of selling it internally. One of the challenges I have observed in my career is that people don't like change. They like to stay in their comfort level and do what they know and do what they enjoy. So introducing new technology sometimes can have a bit of resistance or can have huge pushback. And, oh, well, the system doesn't do this, the system doesn't do that. You know, it's really interesting to have observed over my years of experience, the different responses. People that embrace technology and embrace change generally, or people that just think it's a pain in the butt. And I've done my job for so many years, and you know, I've worked here for so many years. Why are you now giving me this funny system? So I think, again, it's the system and the interrelational, the human relationship side that needs to be balanced. Huge challenge.
Yes, absolutely agree. You know, I especially, you know, during the last 2 to 3 months time during the COVID, a lot of the people work from home. I think the technologies, you know, automations is definitely important. And, you know, I'm always thinking whether AI becomes an HR staff. It's important because, you know, HR always a lot of the paperwork and, you know, a lot of the workflow that we need to do it. So definitely, I think as an HR, we need to think big and, you know, work out of our comfort zone. And to, you know, nowadays HR need to play a more, you know, bigger role in helping the organizations and its employee become the future proof. So that's, you know, especially as I mentioned earlier, you know, HR needs to overcome all these challenges to equip ourselves first and to equip, you know, upskilling, especially for the technologies, because I know that quite a lot of the HR still working a lot of the operation and, you know, it should be the administrative role. That's a lot of the paper you know, documents that need to handle. But whether we need to think about of the digital HR and more strategic workplace and or do more people analytic, so that, you know, right on this knowledge, you know, HR can help the organizations to design the new programs to increase the innovative and productivities. So, you know, we can also use the data and analytic to set the targets and measure effectively. And so that, you know, all this nowadays technologies is important.
Yeah,
Absolutely. I'm glad you mentioned AI. I'm really interested watching that space very closely. I was approached by a company who very kindly said that I was a very experienced recruiter. So they asked me to help because they're designing an AI program. And of course, in order to start that, you need some guidelines for, okay, if I've got vacancy ABC, what skills, how would a human interviewer ask questions? What would they ask? And you know, what would a grading or a fail or, okay, pass on to the HR recruiter, the screening has been passed. So it's a very, very interesting space. And AI, I think, is already, it's like VR, you know, it's already out there, it's already very advanced. Sadly, not yet in the HR space, but it's coming. So get ready, participants, get ready.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you guys both know it, right? Like if the HR team continue to be very process centric, not only they work like a robot, they could be, you know, replaced by a robot very easily as well. So yeah, I think it is really important that, you know, both the HR leaders and the HR team understand, you know, the new strategic role and, you know, start working on it. I'm a bit aware of time, but before I let everyone go, I want to have one last question for our panelists here. I usually prepare one, but I think I've seen one from the audience, which is really good. So I'm going to use that one as our last question. Adele was here, asked that question about, there are a lot of things we have to do as HR, especially when we become a more strategic HR professionals. What will be the top 3 priorities under this new normal? I'm going to throw this question to both of you. Eliza, would you like to start?
Sure. I think the first three priorities should be to win the best talent, retain them, and help them to remain competitive. This is important. So that's why, especially for HR, if we still use as our traditional HR approach, this is not worth. So how we can use it, automation, use the automations, and how to win the best talent. As I mentioned, nowadays not easy to find a talent. So how you can win is important.
Win the war, retain them, and train them. And
yes.
How about Ruth? What do you see are the top three priorities in the new normal?
Okay, I would say agility. So of course, that's mental agility, physical, intellectual agility, being proactive, not reactive. I think the traditional HR model has been more reactive rather than proactive, and connect to the business.
Great. Thank you very much, our panelists here today for your sharing. Really lovely interaction also with our audience. Thank you for the audience for the question as well. I'll now wrap up the session here and pass the stage back to Winston.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Wow, we had a really great number of discussions and great amount of information to digest. First of all, thank you for your valuable inputs on upskilling from Ruth, Eliza, and their thoughts on how HR can be more strategic. The earlier session, thanks Danny at Workday on an intelligent approach to optimizing talent, and the insights from CY, Mukta, and Christoph at Panopto on creating a skills-based approach to making the workforce more adaptable. And of course, our earlier sessions from Jonathan at KPMG on the anywhere workforce, it can be done. And the session that I moderated on managing autonomous employees, we had Gwen, Samantha, and Ruth. Thank you all. The one thing I've learned, or a few things that I've learned, is that HR is now a change agent, whether you are ready for it or not. And also your next colleague will be an AI program. I hope you enjoyed our third installment of our Digital Workforce Trends DigiLive series, where we delve deeply into specific technologies and the topics around employee experience in the future workforce. I would like to thank our executive roundtable sponsor, Workday, and our video learning partner, Panopto, for making today's conference happen. I would also like to ask everyone to not just stop here, please continue the conversations with the participants or the sponsors online or offline. We are all in new territory, and I believe it is through engagement and discussion we can create new guardrails and best practices. But we also want to tell us what you want to hear and see in our upcoming events. So please help us to complete the survey you'll see shortly. We are particularly interested in knowing if you're open to attending live events in our market, or if you still prefer online events. Meanwhile, do look out for our articles, which will crystallize some of the thoughts and lessons that we have heard today. Again, I would like to thank you, the audience, for staying with us throughout. Till our next event, please stay safe and goodbye.